Hi guys, today we will be doing a crash course on C language, and I can assure you that after watching this video you will be able to move on to data structures and algorithms and even to other programming languages as well. So this one video should be enough for C language. So without wasting any further time, let's start the video. So first of all, what is C? C is a language. Okay, what kind of language? A programming language. So let's say we have English. English is a language that we use to communicate with humans. So likewise, C is a language that we will use to communicate with computers. Okay, I know that computer only understand binary language. So we will write something in C language, then it will get converted into binary and our computer will understand it. Now we will not go into detail how C language will be converted into binary. For now, you can just assume that C is the language that we will use to communicate with the computer. Okay, so I can write like this: C is a programming language used to communicate with computers. We will write some code that we want to execute in C language, and then it will be executed by the computer. So is C the only language that we can use to write programs? No, there are other languages, programming languages also, like C++, Java, Python and etc. There are n number of languages. Okay, so we can use any one of them. Now C is very similar to English language, so we will follow the same steps that we use to learn English to learn the C. Okay, now tell me, how do we learn English? So first we learn about the alphabets, like from A to Z, or we talk about small a to Z also. So first we learn about the alphabets. Okay, then what we do? The next step is how to make words using alphabets. So after learning that, what is our third step? So the third step is how to make sentences using words. Okay, so this much is the base of the English language, but there are other things too, like helping verbs, tenses, grammar and so on. So likewise, first we will start from the very basics, like the alphabets. So in C we can have the very basic is like constants, variables, we have something called keywords. Okay, so first let's focus on these, then we will gradually move on. Now first of all, let's see what are constants, variables and keywords, then we will see their examples and usage. So constant is something whose value does not change, and variable is something whose value can change. It is also clear from their meaning also, na? Constant means something whose value will not change. Variable means it is a variable, the value can vary, the value can change. Okay, now what is this keyword? Keyword is something that has a special meaning. Okay, now what is this special meaning? You will understand it better when we make the program. Okay, for now just remember that constant is something whose value cannot change, variables value can change, and keywords are like something special. Okay, they convey a special meaning. Now let's see their usage. First of all, let's start by constant. So let's see the examples of constant. Okay, so 7 can be a constant. 7 is 7, no? 7 will never become 8, so 7 is constant. So likewise we can have -10. -10 is also constant, it will always remain -10. These are about integers. Let's say we want a real number. Okay, we can have like this 5.25. It is again a constant. We can have negative real numbers also, like -1.2. This is a negative real number. What else we can have? We can have characters. A character is a single character like A or E. So these are characters. So we can have integers, we can have real numbers, we can have characters. So these are my constants. Now what is variable? variable is something that I can use to hold some value, to point to some value. Okay, let's say a variable is like a container. Okay, so this is my container, let's name it as x. Now whatever value I put in this container, let's say input 5, now my x, what will be x? Now x will be 5. Okay, now what will be the value of x? X will be 5. Let's say I remove this 5, now what do I put? I put 10. Now what will be the value of x? X value will be 10 now. So do you see the difference between constant and variable? The constant value could not change, but here x is a variable, it is like a container. Okay, so whatever value I put inside that container, so that will be the corresponding value of my x. So I can change the value of x. Now one more thing, we cannot just simply say like this x equals to 10. We have to first declare the type. What the type? The type of value x will hold. So a variable can only hold the value of a particular type. Okay, let's say we want to store integers, so the variable will hold the type of value of integer type only. To hold a value of different type, we will have to use a different variable of that type. What I say is, let's say I want to store store an integer, so I will declare the variable like this, int x equals to 10. This int is for integers. Let's say I want a character, so I will do like this, char c equals to a. Okay, so this int declares that x will hold a value of type integer. Char means c is a character type variable which will hold a value of type character. Okay, so that's how we will use variables. Now every this is a statement now, so every statement in C will end with a semicolon. Okay, likewise here also. So again one more repeating, int means that x is a variable which will hold the value of type integer. So as you can see, we are giving a value of type integer to this x. Likewise char means C will hold a value of type character. Okay, now one more thing is remaining, keywords. So what are keywords? As I told you, keyword has some special meaning. Okay, now this int and char, these are nothing but my keywords. Okay, examples int, char, these are my keywords. These contain some special meaning. What is the special meaning of int? It says that this x will hold a value of type integer. What is the special meaning of char? It says that c will hold a value of type character. So these are conveying some special meaning now. So that's why we call them as keywords. Okay, now let's write our first code in C language. So the most basic program in C will look something like this. Now let's understand this line by line. So the first line is a header file. It is so the lines which begin from hashtag include are called header files. Okay, so we can write like this. Now what is this second line? This main is a function. Main is also a keyword. What do you mean by keyword? That has some special meaning. So main is like a function. When we run the program now, so the execution will begin from this main function. So the operating system will call this main function whenever we run the program, and the execution will always begin from this main function. Okay, so now what is this third line? Third line you can understand from this, like print. Forget this f, print, like we are printing something. Where are we printing? To the output console. Okay, to our screen. So whatever we want to show on our screen, we will pass it to this printf function and it will print in on our screen. Okay, so it will print whatever we pass on our screen. Now we did not write the code for this. Okay, this printf is a inbuilt function. It has some code already in it, that whatever we pass, it will show us on the screen. So where do that come code come from? It comes from this header file. Okay, so the definition or the code of printf is defined inside this header file stdio.h, and to use this printf function we must include this header file. Okay, so one more concept, that whenever we use a inbuilt function, then to use that we have to include its corresponding header file. So likewise, to use printf we have to include this stdio.h header file. Okay, now about this last line, return 0. Actually you will understand it more when I will teach the functions. Okay, so likewise this main is a function. Okay, now there is some concept related to functions which is defined by this return keyword. Okay, so when we will cover the functions topic, then I will explain this what is return 0. For now you can assume that whenever we write this int main function, we have to write this return 0 at the last. Okay, so one more time I am doing a quick recap. This is the beginning of the program where we write all the header files. This is the main function which will be called by the operating system. The execution of program will begin from here. Now whatever we write inside these curly braces is the body of this main function. We can write multiple statements like this, and at last we write return 0. Okay, so this is the most basic C program. Now that we know how to write program in C, but where do we execute this? Okay, we need some practical implementation also, na? So to run this program, to execute this program, we will need a compiler. Now what is a compiler? Compiler is something which will give us, the environment where we can write this code, and simultaneously we can also execute this. So we will see the output also there. Okay, so I am using a compiler called as Dev C++. You can use any modern compilers like Dev C++, CodeBlocks, Visual Studio, or any other also. Just don't use Turbo C. Okay, that is very outdated. So for this video I will be using Dev C++. You can use any compiler. Now let's go on to the compiler and run this simple program. So here we are. This is my compiler. Now Dev C++ supports both C language and C++ language. Okay, this is the code for C language. So you see a button here which says compile and run. So when I click on this, so it will compile and run the program, and it will present me a output screen in which I will be able to see my output. So I said that print hello, so it is printing me hello. The output is showing hello. Okay, let's take one more statement, or let's change this like hello, I am Gagan. Now let's run this again, compile and run. So see, the output is changed to now hello, I am Gagan. So that's how we will run the program. Now whatever we write here now, it will be processed by this compiler. What if I want to write something for my own understanding that should be skipped by the compiler? So that is something known as comments. So first of all, let's see the definition of comments. Then I will show you here how to write comments. So comments. What are comments? Comment is something that is for my own understanding. It will be not processed by the compiler. Okay, so statements which are for our own understanding and is skipped by the compiler, it's known as comments. Now how to write the comments? We can write like this. So the syntax of writing the comments is like this: 2 slashes and then our statements. So like this is a comment. So if I write something which is preceded by this 2 slashes, then it becomes a comment. It will not be processed by the compiler. It will be for my own understanding. Okay, let's see it in the compiler also. Now we are back to our compiler. Let's say I want to mention a comment about this printf function, what it does. So I can mention something like this. So now this statement should be skipped by the compiler. This is for my own understanding. Let's verify by running. So as you can see, we are getting only this hello, I am Gagan in the output. This statement, this comment will be skipped. So this is for my own understanding. Okay, now let's talk a bit more about this printf function. So till now we are printing only constants. Like this is something constant. This is never gonna change. If it is confusing you, let's say like I am printing 7. So this will only print 7. Or every time it will print 7 only. Okay. What if I want to print a variable? We discussed like what is the concept of variable. We can declare like this: int x equals to 5. What if I want to print the value of this x? So I cannot just simply say that printf and x. No, it will print x, not the value of this variable x. To print this, we have to use something like this. So the printf function, we will use it like this. First of all, we will declare what type of value we are printing. We are printing an integer. Okay. So %d is for integer. Then we will say the name of the variable. Okay. Again one more time repeating. Printf function, that is we know it will print. What is x? It is a variable whose value we want to print. To print that value, we will first have to declare what type of value we are printing. So for integers, we have %d. Let's make it comment here. %d is for integers, so that we remember. Now when we execute this, then the value of x will be printed. So as you can see, first we are printing 7, then 5 gets printed. What is 5? The value of x. Let's verify it. Let's comment this. Okay. Let's change the value of x. Let's say it is 10. Now let's print. Now this printf is a comment now. So that's why we are not printing 7. Value of x is 10. We are printing value of x and 10 gets printed. Okay. So this is how we print the variables. Now one more concept related to that. Till now we are printing hard coding the values. We are just saying x equal to 5, x equals to 10. What if I want my user to give the value? One more time. Till now I am deciding the value of the x. What if I want to ask the user the value of x? So we can take input also from the user. So to take input, we use a scanf function. Okay. So likewise we have printf function for printing. We have a scanf function also that is used to take the input. Okay. So how to write that? So the name of the function is scanf. Now we cannot take an input in a constant. Okay. We have to take it in a variable. So x is my variable. I want to take input in x. So I write this ampersand and x. It means that take input in this x. Okay. In actual, this ampersand means something else that we will know later, but for now just assume that ampersand x means that take the value inside this x variable. And what is this %d? We already know that x is a integer type variable. That's why we are using %d. Okay. So now it will take a input from the user into this x, and then we can print whatever user passes. Okay. So let's verify this also. Let's copy paste it here. Okay. So first the value of x will be 10. It will be printed. Now we are asking the user to input something into the x. So the x value should change. Then we are again printing the new value of the x. Okay. So now let's run this program and verify whether it is working or not. One more thing also, guys, that if you see after printing x, the cursor is on the same line, that it will become confusing. So to take this cursor to the new line, we have to print a new line. How do we do that? So after printing this x, I want my cursor on the new line. So I will print a new line. How to print? It is like this. Simple printf and then \n. So it will print a new line. I can mark a comment here also. Prints a new line. Now the cursor will come to new line and we will be able to give the input. So as you can see, first 10 is printed, then a new line is printed. Now our cursor is in the new line. Let's say I give 6 value to the x. Press enter to give the value. Now again value of x is the recent value of x is printed. Okay, so that's how scanf and printf works. Let's see one more example including characters. So till now we are taking only integers. Let's talk about characters. Okay, so let's say this is a character. Now let's not take any initial value, just declare it. Okay, now we are not printing this also. Let's remove this. We are just declaring a variable of type character. Then in scanf we have to change this. So likewise %d is for integers, then %c is for characters. So here we have to also change %c. Now this is character x, %d is for integers. We can make one more comment, %c is for characters. Now to take the input in x, we declare this %c here. Similarly to print, we mark %c here also. Let's again run the program. So it is not printing anything because we are expecting an input before printing anything. Let's say g. So as you can see that g is printed. Let's try one more time. Now let's give s. So s is printed. So it is working. Okay, so that's how we will use printf and scanf. I hope that you are able to understand printf and scanf. Now let's move on to the next topic. Now let's see what are data types. Data type is something which tells what type of value the variable will contain. We have already seen two data types. We have seen int, we have seen char. So this char is nothing but a data type. It is telling me that x is a variable which will hold a value of type character. So what is the data type of this x? It is char. We have already seen int, like int a. So the data type of a is int. Okay, so there are various data types, but we will now focus on primarily three data types which are very commonly used. There are secondary data types like array structures as well, which we will cover later. For now we will have char, int, and one more, float. So we have already seen char and int. What is float? Float is nothing but real numbers. Okay, so if I give examples, so char means a character like a, integer means something like this 5. What is float? Real numbers like 5.26. So these are characters, these are integers, and float means real numbers. Okay, so we had %c for characters, %d for integers, and we have %f for floats. Okay, so these are our three primary data types, char, int, and float. For them we have %c, %d, and %f. Now like we can do 6 plus 7 in math, we can add the variables also. Okay, so let's remove all this. Now look at this very simple program. First we declare two integers a and b. A is 5, b is 8. Then we declare another integer c. What is c? A plus b. So in short we can say that c is nothing but 13, 8 plus 5. Now what we are doing, we are printing. So first see, this will be printed as it is, sum is equal to. When we get this %d, then it will find an integer here. So for %d, it will print the value of c, then it will print \n. What is \n? It is new line. So it will print sum is equal to 13, then a new line. Now in this second printf, we will print diff means difference, short for difference, is equal to, then it will get a %d. So it will search for an integer here. Now instead of storing b minus a into another integer, we are directly calculating it here. So b minus a, 8 minus 5, 3 will be an integer, and 3 will be printed because of this %d, and after that a new line. Okay, now let's run this. So as you can see, first we print sum is equal to 13 and diff is equal to 3. Okay, so we can do operations like we can store the sum in a variable, or we can just directly pass the calculation in the printf function also. Okay, so this is about the arithmetic operations. We can even combine integers and floats. Okay, how? Let's take a float variable 1.2. Now instead of a plus b, let's have here a plus f. Now what is 5 plus 1.2? It should be 6.2, but c is an integer, it cannot hold a a real number. So 6.2, instead of 6.2 we will store only 6. Okay, let's run this. So see, 5 plus 1.2 is 6.2, but since c is an integer, it will store only 6. So we will get 6 only. If we change this into float, let's make c as float, and so here we have to change f to %f. Now it will hold 5 plus 1.2, that is 6.2. So it will give me 6.2. So as you can see, now c is 6.2. So this is about the arithmetic calculations between integer and float. Okay. Likewise, we can have multiple operators like division, multiplication, okay, subtraction, addition we have already seen. There is one more operator like modulus. What is that? Now let's say I want the remainder. Okay, so when we divide 8 by 5, what is the remainder? 3. So a modulo operator will calculate the remainder. So if let's say int remainder is equal to b mod a. How to calculate mod? %. This % is not percentage, this is a mod operator. Okay, mod operator. So it will calculate the remainder, b divided by a and the remainder. So when we divide 8 by 5, remainder is 3. So we will get the remainder as 3. Let's print it. So as you can see, remainder turns out to be 3. So this was about the data types, int, char, float, and the operations that we can perform. Okay. Now, till now what we are doing, we are just simply going in one flow. So whatever we are writing, it is being executed. What if I want some conditional behavior? In other words, what if I want to take a decision based on some condition? To simplify this, let's say I have int age and I am asking the user to input age. Okay, so this is how I will ask. I will print a message like enter your age, then input its age. Now based on this value of age, I want to take a decision. Let's take a very normal decision, like if age is greater than equal to 18, then we will print a message that you are adult, else we will print a message you are child. Now I cannot simply go on by printing here. First I have to take a decision based on this age. So for that we have a if condition. So how to use that? First we write if, then we write the condition inside this parenthesis, and whatever we want to execute based on this condition we can write here. Else we will write here. Okay, see. So now let's write the condition. If age is greater than equal to 18, I want to take a decision. What is my decision? I want to print adult. Else if this condition is false, what I want to do? I want to print child. Okay, see, the syntax is like this. First we write if is a keyword, then we write the condition inside parenthesis, then we write the body of this if statement inside this curly braces. We can have else part also, like if this condition is false, then this else part will be executed. Okay, again one more time repeating, if this condition is true, then this part will be executed, and we are having a else block also. So if condition is false, then this block will be executed. We can have one more variant here also, like now look at this. First we check this condition. If age is greater than equal to 18, then we print adult, and all this will be skipped. Okay, now if in case this condition is false, then we will check this one. So it is like understand it using in plain English. What we are saying, if then do this, else if then do this, and nothing, if nothing becomes true, then else finally do this. Okay, so if age is greater than equal to 18, print adult. Else if, then we have one more condition, if age is greater than equal to 13, so then we will print teenager. If both conditions are false, then finally we will execute this else block which says child. Okay, so this is if, else, if, then else. We can have, you know, nested conditions also. Nested in means like if inside if. So we have this one if condition here, I can have one more if condition here. Okay, so this if inside one more if, so this is nesting of conditions. Okay, I can have one more else here also, I can have else if also. So condition inside a condition is called nesting of conditions. Okay, so that's how we use conditions. So if you want to take a decisive behavior, a conditional behavior, then you will use these conditions. Okay, we can have simple if, we can have if with else, we can have this type of ladder like if, else if, then finally else. We can have if inside if, else inside if, है ना, nesting of conditions also we can have that. So these are, you know, different types of writing the conditions. It will all depend on our logic. Okay, now let's move on to the next topic, which is loops. Why we need loops? First of all, understand that. Let's remove all this. Let's say I want to print my name 5 times. Okay, so Gagan, then this new line. If I want to print my name 5 times, I will have to write this statement 5 times. Are you with me? So how will I print Gagan 5 times? I will have to write this statement 5 times. But if I were to print it 100 times, then would I go on writing it 100 times? Obviously no. So to do some repetitive work, we will need loops. Okay, again, why we need loops? To do some repetitive work. To do some repetitive work, we can use loops. Now we have 3 kinds of loops in C and C++. One is for loop, while loop, and do while loop. Okay, I will explain like the whole logic how the loops work using the for loop. Now let's see the syntax of for loop. Actually, for that I can show you in the notepad file by drawing some diagrams. So how to use for loops? First let's see the syntax of for loop. We write like this, for. So this is the syntax of the for loop. First we have initialization part in which we can initialize some variables. Then we have this conditional part. The third part is this increment or decrement, and finally whatever we write inside the curly braces is the body of the for loop. Now how it will work? So first of all, this is the first part, initialization part. Let's name the condition as second part, body as third part, and increment and decrement as fourth part. So when the program will reach to this for loop, first it will enter here. Okay, at the first part, it will initialize all the variables that we need to use inside this for loop. Then from 1 it will be only done once. From 1 we will go to 2. Then we will check the condition. So until this condition is true, we will execute this for loop. As soon as this condition becomes false, we will exit the for loop. Okay, so when this condition is true, we will go on to this third part. After executing the statements in the body, we will go back to this fourth part. Now we will perform some increment or decrement on the counter to, you know, have a conditional behavior. We need, at some point we need exit from the loop, na? So we will either increment or decrement based on our logic. So then finally the condition will become false and we will exit the loop. So from 4 we will go to 2. Again, when we are at 2, we will check the condition. If it is true, then we will go to 3. I can write it here also like T for true. Now from 3 we will go to 4, then back to 2. Can you see a loop here? From 2 to 3 to 4 and back to 2. 3, 4, 2. 3, 4, 2. 3, 4, 2. So this is the loop we are talking about. Okay, so until this condition is true, this loop will be executed. Like from condition we will go to body, then increment and decrement, then again to condition. This is the loop that I am talking about. Until this condition is true, this loop will keep on executing. As soon as this condition becomes false, what I will do? I will reach here at the end of my for loop. when the condition becomes false. So let me repeat it once more. First we will go on to this initialization part. This will be executed only once. Then we will go to this condition part. Until this condition is true, we will have this loop, like condition, then to body, then to increment and decrement, and back to condition. 2 3 4 2 3 4. This loop will run until this condition becomes false. So when it becomes false, we will come here to the end of the for loop. Okay, so if we have any more statements after this for loop, we will execute them, else the program will end here. Okay, so this is the working of the loop. Now let's see an example of the loop. Okay, now let's write a simple for loop to print my name 5 times. For that we will need a counter to keep track of how many times we have printed. So let's first declare the variable I. Now let's write our for loop. So initially let's say the value of I is 0. How many times would I want to print? I want to print 5. So I can go from 0 up to 5. So I is less than 5. Then at every iteration I will increment the value. Statement is simple. I am just printing my name. Now let's see. First we declare a variable I. Then inside this for loop, this is initialization part. It will be executed only once. So I will be set to 0 initially. After that we will go on to here condition part. Since 0 is less than 5, condition is true. So we will go to body part. Then Gagan will be printed. Then we will go to I++. What is I++? It will increment the value of I by 1. So I will become from 0 to 1. Again this condition is true. So we will print one more Gagan. Then I++. Then I will become 2. Again condition check, it is true. Again one more Gagan. Then I will become 3 and 4 and finally 5. So when I will become 5, now this condition is false. So we will come here at this statement after this for loop. So since we don't have any print statements, we have just simply written 0. So we will, our program will end. So again I am repeating, we take a variable, we initialize it, then this is condition. Until this condition is true, this Gagan will be printed. I++ is nothing but incrementing the value by 1. So it will go on from 0 up to 5. That means 5 times this loop will execute and it will print Gagan 5 times. So likewise we can have nesting of conditions, we can have nesting of loops also, means loop inside a loop. Now before nesting of loops, first let's see 2 more important concepts related to this loop. One is break keyword, one is break, and the second one is continue. Okay, now to understand the concept of break and continue, let's modify this loop a little bit. So instead of simply printing Gagan, we can print the value of I. Change, instead of printing Gagan, I am printing the value of I. Let's run this. So what we are getting? We are getting the values of I, 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now first let's understand the break keyword. Now I have added one more condition here, like I is equals to 2. So if the value of I becomes 2, then this condition will be true and break keyword will be executed. Now let's dry run this. So first I will be 0. So this condition is true, we enter here. Now we check this condition. Since I is 0, this condition is false. So break is not executed. So we print the value of I, which is 0. So 0 is printed. Then I++, I becomes 1. Again this condition is true, this is false. So we will print I, which is 1. Now I becomes 2. This condition is still true. Now I has become 2. So this condition is also true. So we will reach here at break. Now what will break do? It will break my loop. So it will skip all the statements. It will terminate the loop. I can say that. So it will terminate my loop and I will directly reach here. So 2, 3, 4 will not be printed this time, because when my value of I becomes 2, I am breaking the loop. I am skipping all the statements and the loop also. I am directly coming down here when I do this break. Okay, so if I run this program, you can see only 0 and 1 is printed. Why? Because when the value of I becomes 2, this break keyword will be executed and it will break my loop. I will directly come here, skipping all the statements below it. Okay, so this is about break. It will break my loop. Now let's see about continue. No change, just replace this break with continue. Now what will be the output? See, again I will be 0, this condition is true, this is false, so we will print 0. Then I plus plus, I is 1, this is false, we print I, so 1 is also printed. Then I becomes 2. Now this condition is true, so continue will be executed. What is continue? It says that skip the loop once and continue my loop. So the statements below it will be skipped only once and my loop will be continued. So the difference between break and continue is that break will also skip the statements below it, but it will terminate the loop. Continue will also skip the statements below it, but it will do it only once and it will continue the loop. So 2 will not be printed, because when the value of I becomes 2, we are continuing the loop, skipping the statements below it. So then I will become 3. We will reach here and I will become 3. Now this condition is false, so we will print 3. Then I will become 4, again this is false, so we will print 4. Then I will become 5, this condition will become false, and we will exit the complete loop and directly reach here. So my output should be 0, 1, 3 and 4. 2 will not be printed because when I was 2, I skipped the statements below the continue and continued my loop. So now let's run this. As you can see, I am getting only 0, 1, 3 and 4. 2 is skipped because of this condition and this continue keyword. So the difference between break and continue is that break will break my loop, continue will continue my loop, skipping the statements below it only once. So that was about the for loop, break and continue. Now let's see the nesting of loops. Now let's understand nesting of loops. What was nesting? Loop inside loop. Okay, that we can see because we have one for loop inside another for loop. So this is nesting. Now I will explain the complete working, how this nesting will work. Nothing. First we will start from here, from the outer loop. I will be set to 0. We will check this condition. So 0 is less than 5. We will reach here. Okay. Now again we have one more loop. So j will be set to 0. We will check this condition. 0 is less than 3. So we will come here. We will print the value of j. What is the value of j? 0. Let's track the output here. So we will print 0 and I space. Okay. So and I space. Now we will reach here j plus plus. J will become 1. Again this condition is true. So we will print the value of j. What is the value? 1. Now again j plus plus, j will become 2. Again this condition is true. So we will print 2. Now j will become 3. Now this condition is false. So we will exit this loop. Okay. The condition of this loop is false now. So we will exit this loop and come here. What is here? Print a new line. Okay. So give me a new line. Again now what will happen? I plus plus. From here where we will go? We will go to here. I plus plus. I will become 1. This condition is still true. 1 is less than 5. Again this for loop will start. So again j will be set to 0. Then again we will check the condition and same printing the value of j. So j is 0, print 0. Then j plus plus, j becomes 1, print 1. Then 2. Again j will become 3. This condition will become false. So exit this inner loop, come here and print a new line. Okay. Now what will happen? I will become 2 now. This condition is still true. So again the same process will be repeated. 0, 1, 2 will be printed by this loop and a new line. So we will get this. Now I will become 3. Again the process will be repeated. Similarly I will become 4 and one more time we will get this. Now what happens? I will become 5 now. So this condition is false. So since the condition of outer for loop is false, so we will exit everything. Okay. Both the outer and the inner. Why? See, what is the body of this outer for loop? This one. And what I told, if the condition of a loop is false, we will exit its complete body. Okay. So when this condition becomes false, we will exit complete body of this loop, including this inner loop also, and we will directly reach here and our program will end now. So our output should be like this. Okay. One more time repeating. whenever the condition of a loop becomes false, we will exit only its body. Okay, so when this becomes false, we will exit only this, but when this becomes false, we will exit this complete. Okay, because this loop is coming inside the body of this outer loop, so that will be the execution. So let's comment this output and try to run the program. So as you can see, we are getting the same output that we desired. So that's how nesting will work. Okay, it's not difficult, guys, just pay the simple attention, just pay attention. So go as I have described, first initialize, then keep on executing until this condition is true, and go on, condition body increment, condition body increment, go on like that. Okay, so that's how you will understand. Now how will break and continue work inside this? So if I place a break here now, so this break will only break this loop, not the outer loop. Okay, similarly if I place continue here, it will continue only this loop, not the complete outer loop. Okay, for that I have to place a break and continue here, whatever we need according to our logic. Okay, so this break and continue is in the scope of a loop only, so wherever we put it, it will have effect on that loop only, not the outer loop. Okay, so that's how break and continue will work here. We have to define, write it according to our logic what we need. Okay, so right now I am not explaining this, you should be clear how nesting will work. Okay, the implementation will remain the same, first initialize, then run the loop until this condition is true. As soon as the condition becomes false, exit the body of that loop. Okay, the main funda remains the same. So that was about the loops and nesting of loops. Let's start with another topic now. Okay, so now I think that it's right time to talk about this return 0. So to understand this return 0, first we have to understand how to define our own functions. Like we know that this main is an inbuilt function which is called by operating system. We can define our own functions also. Okay, so now let's do that. So yes, how to define our function. So how do we declare a variable? We declare its data type, then the name of the variable, and we can assign some value also. Okay, so in case of function we don't have data type, we have something called as return type. Let's erase all this one also. Now the syntax of defining a function is something like this. Okay, so first we write the return type, that what type of value this function will return. Then we have function name, we can give any name. Then we have this parenthesis, inside parenthesis we can have parameters, we will talk about parameters. Then as usual we will have curly braces, and whatever we write inside this curly braces will be the body of my function. Let's take a small example. Like I want to design a function which will accept an integer and return me its square. Okay, so integer it will accept and it will return me a square of that integer. So again that would be an integer. So what will be the return type in that case? Int. Let's name the function as square. Now how to declare the parameters? Whatever we expect to pass into this function, we need to declare it. I need an integer, so let's say I declare like this, int a, then body. So I can do something like this, int s equals to a into a, and then return s. So what I am doing, square is my name of the function. It expects an integer value and returns an integer value. What I am doing inside body, I am calculating the square of that number and then returning it. Okay, so we can return integer, character, float. We have a special return type also, void. Let's talk about void also. So if our function does not return anything, then we have to take the return type as void. Okay, so let's say I have a function like print. It does not take any parameter and does not return anything also. What it does is just simply print something, maybe like hi. So it will not expect any parameters, nor it will return anything. It will just print hi. So that's why we are not having a return statement in this case. Okay, So void is a special return type. When we don't want to return anything, then we write void. Void means null, empty. Okay. Now, how to call these functions? So first of all, if we want to call a square function, then we will call like this, square. Then we will pass some value, let's say 5. Now it will return me an integer, so I need to collect it. Okay, so I can collect in a variable. So int s will collect this s returned by this square function. Okay, don't get confused that why is this s is same as this. We can have another name also. Okay, let's say sq. We can have different names also. Okay, name does not matter, type should match. If we are returning an integer, then we have to take it in an integer. Okay, so what it will do, it will call the function square, pass 5 into it, then this will happen and it will return me 5 into 5, 25. It will get inside this sq, then I can print it. Okay, see one more time, this function, this will call the square function and pass 5 to it. It will do some calculation, 5 into 5, that is 25. It will return 25. Where that 25 will be stored? Here inside sq. Then I can print this sq. Okay, now in C language, before calling a function, first we have to declare it. Okay, how to declare? So there are two ways. Either we can define this function above the main function, then there is no need to declare. Okay, if we define some function before its calling, okay, if we are defining it above square, then no need to declare. It serves both declaration and definition. So then we can execute it. Okay, let's comment this out and run it. So as you can see, 25 gets printed. Okay, now another way is that, let's say we want to call this print function also. Okay, now I don't want to define this above the main function. Okay, so after printing square, I am calling print function. How do I call it? Name of the function, then parenthesis and semicolon. Now it does not expect any parameter, so that why it is empty. So that's how we will call print function. But before calling print function, we have to first declare it. Okay, so we can declare like this. Either we can cut and paste it here, or we can simply do this, void print, and that's it. So we just write the return type, the name of the function, the parameters, and then semicolon. We don't write the body. We define the body of the function here later on. Okay, so either we can go like this, like defining the body of the function above the calling, or first we can declare and after that we can define the body later on. Okay, let's run this. So as you can see, first 25 gets printed because we are calling this square function and printing this sq value. Then we are calling this print function that does not expect anything nor returns, it just prints high. So high is also printed. Okay, so that's about function. Now you must be wondering why this return 0. The signature of int main function. So see, main is a inbuilt function, we cannot change its signature. Okay, so the signature of main functions in most of the compilers is int. It returns an integer to the operating system. Some compilers will even allow you to use void main, but most of the compilers will not allow this. Okay, so there have to be int main only. So for that we return this integer value, generally 0. Okay, you can also see it here. Process exited after this much time with return value 0. So whatever value you return, you can see here also. Okay, if I change this return 0 to return 2, you see, then what is my return value? Process exited with return value 2. So you can see it here also. Okay, so it's our understanding that whether our function get completed or not. Okay, if there was some problem, then we would have not reached this last statement, so that means some problem is there. So if we have reached this last statement, that it means that okay, our program ran successfully and we were able to do whatever we wanted to do. Okay, there were no errors in the program because we reached the last statement. Let me show you. Let's take a error. Okay, so there can be two types of error: compile time error and runtime error. Compile time error is like spelling error. Okay, like if I remove t from here, then it does not know what is printf. If I run, then I will get compile time error. Okay, undefined reference to printf, because it does not know what is printf. This is compile time. Runtime is like, maybe divide by 0. So int d equals to 4 divided by 0. Now this should be a runtime error because divide by 0 is an illegal operation. So if I run it, see, my 25 gets printed, but when this line is called 4 divided by 0, then the program execution is stopped. If you can also observe here, the return value is some random integer. It is not 2. So from here, from checking this return value, I can get to know whether I got a runtime error or not. If there was return 2, that means there was no runtime error, my program finished. But here we are getting a random value, that means we could not reach the last line. There must have been a problem before that. Okay, what is that? This is that we have intentionally make divide by 0. This is a error. That's why our program stopped in between and we could not reach this last statement, return 2. Okay, so I hope that now you get the significance of return 0 in the main function. Now let's move on to next topic. Now the next topic is pointers. What does pointer mean? Pointers means simply to point to something. Okay, so till now we have seen variables of type integer, character and float. What if I need a special variable that will point to some variable? Like we have this sq variable now. I need a special type of variable that will point to this sq variable, or in simple words, that will hold the address of this sq variable. So one thing is for sure, this sq variable must be having some space in the memory and have some address. Now I need to access that address of this sq variable. For that I need a pointer. Let's go on to notepad file, there I can show you. So if you remember, I have shown you, like when we do this int x equals to 10, then what happens? X is like a container, x is like a memory location. Okay, so and the value gets stored inside that memory. So we reference this memory using the variable name x, but this must have a physical address also. Okay, let's suppose that it is 1000. Now what is this? This is a memory block. It is holding an integer. The actual address, let's suppose it is 1000, and we reference to this address as x. Okay, the name of this memory block is x. Now I want a variable that will point to this address. Okay, in short, I need to store this 1000. I need to get this 1000. Okay, how will I do? So I will need a pointer. So for pointers, since we need to point to an integer, the data type of the pointer will be int star. So int star, let's say ptr equals to and x. Let's see syntax first. So syntax is something like this: data type, then star, then pointer name equals to ampersand variable name. So this is how we declare a pointer. What is pointer name? We can have any pointer name. What is variable name? The variable that we need to point to. What is this data type? This data type is the data type of this variable name. Okay, do you remember this ampersand? We have used it in scanf also. So when we use ampersand with any variable name, it means the address. Okay, so if I write like this, int star ptr equals to ampersand x. So ptr is my pointer name, x is my variable name that I need to point to. Int, because the data type of x is integer, so that's why int star. This ampersand x means address of x. Okay, so the value of ptr is nothing but address of x. And what is address of x? In our case, it is 1000. Again repeating, ptr is my pointer name, x is my variable to which I am pointing. Int, because the data type of x is int. Ampersand x means address of x. So the value of PTR is nothing but address of X, which is 1000 in this case. Now I can use this PTR to get the address. Let's say I want to print the address, so I can print like this. So now this PTR will give me the address of this X. Okay, let's try one more time. So X is my integer variable whose value is 10, and let's say the address of X is 1000. PTR is my pointer variable whose value is 1000, which is the address of X, but it must have its own address also. Okay, let's say the address of PTR is 2000. So I am quickly writing some statements. So what is this printf X? It will print the value of X. So output will be 10. What is this ampersand X? Means address of X. Output will be 1000. What is PTR? PTR is holding the address of X. What is that? It is again 1000. Now what is star PTR? Star means value at some address. This PTR is nothing but an address, which is 1000. So star PTR, star 1000 means value present at the address 1000. So at 1000 what value is present? It is 10. So it will give me 10. Now what is ampersand PTR? It is the address of PTR. What is the address of PTR? It is 2000. Okay, so X is value of X, ampersand X, address of X. PTR is value of PTR, but in this case value of PTR is address of X. What is star PTR? Value at this PTR. PTR is a address, so value at this address. So value at 1000, that is 10. What is ampersand PTR? It is the address of PTR itself. Okay, this is which is 2000. So that's about pointers. Now let's see one more important concept related to pointers only, which is also known as call by value and call by reference. Now to understand the difference between call by value and call by reference, let's see this simple program. What are we doing? We are declaring a X whose value is 5. So we are printing the value of X before calling this change function, and after calling that we are printing like after change what is the value of X. So if you observe, what are we doing in change function? We are taking an integer and changing its value to 2. So ideally before calling this change function, the value of X should be 5, and after that value of X should be 2. So let's run. Now before change X equals to 5, after change X equals to 5 only. Why didn't X become 2? Because it is call by value. So when we do like in this way, it is called call by value. So A does not actually point to this X. A is a copy of X. Okay, so A is a separate variable who is a copy of X. So changing A will not change the value of X. So in short, what is call by value? Call by value is that changes made inside a function are not reflected back outside that function. We can write it here. So call by value means whatever changes we make inside a function are not reflected back outside. So to do that, we will need to call by reference. So here we are just passing by value. For changes to reflect, we need to pass by address. How do we do that? So instead of passing X, we need to pass the address of X, but we cannot simply collect address in an integer. For that we have a pointer. If you remember, we just saw that to access the address we need a pointer. So we need to change this into a pointer type, and here. So if we pass by address, then collect it in a pointer and then change its value. Now these changes will be reflected back here also. Why? Because now we are not calling by value. It will not create a copy of this X. This A and X are basically pointing to the same memory location. So whatever changes we make into that memory location will be permanent. So X will also fill them. Okay. So if we change the value here, then it will get reflected here also. Let's try. So if you see, before change X was 5, but after change X is 2 now. The only difference is how we pass them. First we were passing by value, now we are passing by address. So to pass an address, we need to collect it into a pointer and then we can change that value. What is this? Value at address, and we are overwriting it. Okay, we are changing it. So likewise we can write for call by reference also. So what is call by reference? Changes made inside a function will be reflected back outside also. Okay, so that is a concept related to pointers, call by value and call by reference. I hope that it is clear. Now let's move on to arrays. वीडियो को आगे बढ़ाने से पहले भाई जिसने अभी तक चैनल सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया कर लो यार, बड़ी मेहनत लग रही है वीडियो बनाने में. ओके, कर लेना भाई. नाउ लेट्स टॉक अबाउट एरेज. So let's say I want to store marks of 10 students. So for that I will need 10 variables, right? So I will need something like this: int marks 1, then int marks 2, and so on up to int marks 10. So I will need 10 variables to store the marks of 10 students, right? But is that an efficient way? No. Let's say in future I want to store the marks of 1000 students. So will I remember the 1000 names? No. So that's where array comes to the rescue. So array is something which can hold multiple values but of the same time. So array, so by multiple values, how many values we mean? We have to declare it while using the array. Okay, and what is this same type? Same type means same data type. So if I am using an integer array, then it will store all the integers only. I cannot store character or floats there. Okay, so the syntax of using an array is something like this. So that's how we will declare an array. We will declare the data type, a name of an array, then the size of the array inside round brackets. Okay, so this is how we declare an array. Let's see a diagrammatic representation of array to understand more. So for that let's take an example like int array 5. Okay, so I am having a array, the name of the array is arr, whose size is 5 and it will hold integer type values. Okay, so when I do this, what I will get? I will get something like this. So when I declare an array of size 5, I will get a contiguous memory allocation of size 5. So as you can see, I have like 5 slots for 5 elements, and to access those slots I have some indexing. So the first element is at 0 index, second element is at 1 index, and likewise so on. Now why array indexing starts from 0 only? I have made a separate video on that. Okay, you can watch that, like why array indexing starts from 0. Then you will understand that. It is a complete dedicated video on indexing only. Now when I declare this array, I get a memory chunk like this. Now how do I access these values? To access them I need to do like this. So I can write values like this: array 0 equals to 1, array 1 equals to 2. Okay, so the first value is at 0 index, so array 0. Array 0 means this guy, so 1 will be written here. Array 1 means this guy, so 2 will be written here. Likewise I can write 3, 4, 5 here also. Okay, so that's how we can write the values, and to access them we will use the same int syntax. Let's say I want to print the third value. Now where is my third value? It is at index 2, so I will print like this: array of 2. It will give me the third value, so output will be 3. To access the third value I will use index 2. Okay, so in general to access the nth element we will use the index n minus 1. So that's how we can write, that's how we can read. Okay, it is not necessary to hard code the values. We can directly ask the user to enter the values also. Okay, for that let's move on to code editor. Now let's see a simple program of arrays. First we declare an array of size 5. It is an integer type array. Then we print a message like enter 5 values. Then we run a loop 5 times because we need 5 values. So the user will enter 5 values. Initially I will be 0. So the first value will be entered at 0 index. Then I++, second value will be entered at first index. Likewise we will fill up all the places. Then we again print a message like printing the values of array. and now we are printing those values entered by the user. So again running the loop 5 times and then printing the values. So let's run this. So I am getting a message, enter 5 values. So let me enter like 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. So as you can see, printing the values of the array, whatever I entered 10 to 50, I am getting that 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. So that's how we can take the values directly into the array from the user. Okay. So likewise we can initialize the variable at the time of declaration. We can also do the same for the array also. Okay. So to initialize the array at the time of declaration, we can do like this. Okay. So this will fill up the values. So 1 will be at the 0 index, 2 will be at 1 index and so on. So it is like initialization at the time of declaration. Okay. So likewise we can change the value of a variable. These value will also be changed here. So these value will be changed when user will enter. Okay. We can also change like hard coding. So array 1 equals to 10. So here the value at index 1 will be changed, means this 2 will be replaced by 10. Okay. So these are changeable also. Likewise we can change the value of variables. Let's make one more program of arrays. Maybe like having an array of 5 size, then asking a user to enter 5 values, then taking the sum of those 5 values and finally printing them. So let's do it. So how we will do that? First we will declare an array of size 5, then a counter that we will need to run this loop. Now to store the sum, we are using a variable named sum whose initial value is 0. Then we print a message, enter 5 values. Then I have already explained this. The user will enter 5 values and it will get stored in the array. Then we are again running this loop, and this time we are like doing sum equals to sum plus array I. Okay. So we are taking the sum of all the values inside the array, and finally we are printing that sum. I think I should explain this more bit. So let's say the user enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So what will happen? Sum is initially 0. So sum is equal to 0 plus 1. So sum is 1 now. Next time sum is equal to sum plus 2. 1 plus 2, 3. Okay. And likewise we will get the sum of the all the elements in the array. Are you able to imagine this? Let's say the values are like inside the array is this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now first I will be 0. So array 0 is 1. So 0. So let's drag down here. What is sum after each iteration? Initially sum was 0. Now 0 plus 1. So sum is 1 now. Now 1 I plus plus I becomes 1. So sum equals to sum. Now sum is 1. 1 plus 2. So sum is 3 now. Again 3 plus 3. This 3 and array 2. This 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6. Next time I will be 3. So sum is equal to sum plus array 3. So 6 plus 4, that is 10. Finally sum is equal to sum plus array I. 10 plus 5, that is 15. So what is this 15? 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So it is nothing but the sum of the all the elements inside the array. Okay. If you don't believe, we can run this also. Let's input those same values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is sum? 15. If you want, I can run it again with different values. Maybe like 3, 6, 1, 7, 4. What I am getting? 21. 21 is the sum of these 5 values. So that's how we can make use of an array. Okay. One more point. Like we can pass variables inside a function, we can pass array also. Okay. So let's do one thing. Same logic, we will calculate this sum inside that function and that return the sum from that function. Okay. And then we will print sum here. Let's quickly do it. So see what I have done now. Same, declaring the array, then inputting 5 values. This time I am passing array to this function array sum and then calculating this inside this sum variable and finally printing it. Where is this array sum? I have defined it here. Array sum is a function which returns an integer and takes an array. how we declare? See, when we were taking an integer, we were declaring like int a. So similarly we are taking an integer array now. So for marking the presence of array, we use this square brackets. Now here we don't have to declare the size. Okay, so again int means integer array is coming. How we are getting array? Because of these round brackets. Okay, that indicates that an array is coming. We don't need to declare the size. Okay, same logic, sum is equal to 0, calculating the sum and then returning sum, finally getting this sum inside this sum variable and printing it. Okay, so that's how we will pass an array. Nothing will change. Okay guys, just write the name of the array and here write square brackets after the name of the array. That will indicate that okay, array is coming. So that's it about the array. Now let's see one more concept, strings. Actually it is also very similar to array. In C particularly, for using strings there is no data type string. We have to use a character array. So here we are using an integer array. If I use a character array, then it will be treated as a string now. Okay, because C does not offer a string data type. To use strings, we have to use character array. Okay, so now let's see what is a string. A string is nothing but a sequence of characters. Let's take some characters. Like these are what? Individual characters, G, A, and N. These are individual characters. But if I combine them and make a sequence like this, then this is a string. So a sequence of characters enclosed in double quotes is called as a string. Okay, these are individual characters, but when I combine them and make a sequence of characters enclosed in double quotes, a string is always enclosed in double quotes. So this is nothing but a string. But now why do we need a string? Let's see. So this is a simple program. We are taking a character, then printing a message, enter a character, taking input and then printing the character. Okay, let's do this. So if I give a single character G, I am getting it. But what if I want my full name? I want to input my full name. Let's try it. So I am giving my full name, but as you can see in the output I am getting only G. Why? Because I am inputting this whole string into a character, but the character has the capacity to hold only one single character. So it reads only this first character G and ignores all the other characters. That's why I am getting only G in the output. So here comes the strings which will read this complete. Okay, so if we use a string instead of a character, then we can read this complete name and print it. Now how do we get it? So as I already mentioned, a string is nothing but a character array, an array of characters. So if I change this character to a character array, like maybe like this, and let's say the maximum size could be 20. What I have done, I have taken a character array, maximum size I have declared as 20, means I expect that the maximum name would be of 20 characters. Then I print a message, enter a name, then I am taking the input in the array and then printing it. Okay, now likewise we have %c for characters. For strings we have %s. Okay, I can also mention a comment here so that you remember. %s is for strings. Now let's try this. So now I am again giving my name. So as you can see, this time whole string Gagan is printed, because instead of character I am taking input into a character array. What is character array? It's nothing but a string. To implement strings, there is no data type string in C. We have to use character array as a string. So now I am able to get the complete string. Okay, so that's how we can read and print strings. We can also hard code here, like here. Okay, so instead of taking input, we can just hard code the value and then print it. Let's try. So as you can see, I have hard coded Gagan and I am getting Gagan in the output. Okay, now you might be wondering how I am printing all the characters using this only array name. Okay, this is a array, na, array of characters, but this array of characters is like treated as special. Okay, when we take an integer array, then we have to run a loop and then print individual elements. But a character array, if we use this name and use %s with it, then it will print the complete string. Okay, it is treated as a special array. You can, if you don't want to do like this, so how will you do? You can, if you want to go by the array concept, then you can write a loop also. For that, we will need the length of the string. So it is of 5 length. So let's do here 5 I plus plus and then printf. Now we won't take %s this time because we are running a loop and we are printing individual characters. So what will come? %c and then ch of I. So this is how we can, you know, do this in the arrays style. So I am running a loop and then printing the individual characters. Let's try this also. So as you can see, I am getting the Gagan in the output. Okay, so either you can use %s and then pass the name of the string and it will print the complete string, or you can run the loop and then use %c and print individual characters. Now here I can see that the length of the string was 5, that's why I have taken 5. But what if we go back to our original code, like we are taking input from the user. Okay, now I want to know how many characters user will enter, like what will be the length of the string. So I cannot just simply put 5 here. For that I will use a function of a string. So this time we are gonna need another header file and it is string.h. Now why I have included this header file? Because I need a function which is included, which is defined under this header file. And what is that function? That function is strlen. strlen, what it will do? So the name of the function is strlen. It is an inbuilt function which will calculate the length of the string and return it. So how do we use this? We write the name of the function strlen, then pass the name of the string to the function and it will return me a length. It will return me the length of this string and I collect that length into this integer variable named as n. So instead of 5, now I can use n here. Okay, so I can mention comment here. So now you can understand that this strlen is an inbuilt function defined in this header file string.h. What it does, it takes a string as parameter and it will return me the length of the string and I can store it in a variable, then I can use it here. Okay, so let's try this. So I am giving an input. So see, when I give an input, then I pass the string to this strlen function, then it will return me the length and which will be 5. Then I will run this loop and print characters individually. Okay, so this is how we use a string. First we declare a character array, we give a maximum size, like what will be the maximum expected maximum length of the string. Then either we can hard code the value or we can take the input in the string, then we can calculate the length of the string. Either we can print it the characters individually using a loop, or we can print it this way also. Use %s and then just write the name of the string. It will print the complete string. Okay, so that's how we can use the strings in C language. Now let's move on to the next topic. So till now we have seen only primary data types like int, char and float. We have seen one more data type like array, but array has a limitation. What is that? That the array can hold multiple values, that is okay, but of the same type only. So if I take an integer array, then it will hold only integers, not the other data types. This time I want to create my own data type. Okay, so I want to create a data type of like person. I will name the data type as person, and what will have? A person can have a name and a age. So you can imagine something like this. Like this is a person, it has some name and a age. So my data type is person and person has two properties, one is name and one is age. So now I want to create this data type person, and from this data type I will create variables of type person. So how to do that? For that we will need a structure. So the syntax is like this. So struct is the keyword for structure. Then we can give any name to the structure. I have given person. Then we have this curly braces. After curly braces, this semicolon is mandatory. Okay. Now whatever I write inside these curly braces will be the properties of my structure. So I have taken a string which is name and an integer for age. So currently I have taken only two properties for this person. One is name, which is of type string, another is age, which is of type integer. So this is my data type now. Now how do I create variable of type person? So if you remember, how do we declare any variable of any data type? We do this data type and then variable name. So this is how we declare a variable. First we write the data type, then the variable name. So the syntax will remain same. What is my data type in this case? My data type is this, struct person. So this is my data type. Now I can give any name. Let's say I give a name A. So see, this struct person is my data type. What is A? A is my variable name whose data type is struct person. Okay. So what will A get? A will get access to this name and the age. Okay. So one more time repeating, struct person is my data type that I have created here. What is A? A is a variable name whose data type is struct person. So what will A get? A will get a name of type string and age of type integer. So we can initialize it here also like this way. So it has two properties now. First property is name. So let's give it a name. Then comma and second property is age. Let's give age. So struct person A. So A is a person whose values are this way, given in this way. So name and the second value goes to this age. Okay. So first we have declared name, that's why we have given name here. Then age, so age is here. So this is one way, like initializing at the time of declaration. So let's do this in the code editor, then we will see how we can take input from the user. Okay. So here we are. First I have declared my data type. This is person, the name of the data type, then it has name and age. Now I have declared a variable and also initialized it. So the value of name is Gagan and age is 22. Now how do I print them? So we print like this, the name of the variable, then dot name, name of the variable, then dot age. Okay. If I can write it once more if you want. So like printf, I am printing name. Name is equal to, now to print a string we need percentage s, so percentage s. Then after that, what is my variable name? A, but I cannot simply print A. I have to access this name. So A dot, you can see the suggestions, name. So A dot name will give me the name. Likewise, age equals to, now age is of integer type, so %d will come. Okay. Then A dot, I cannot simply print A, I have to access this age. So A dot age. Now I can print them. So let's run the program. So as you can see, name equals to Gagan, age equals to 22 is coming. So how do we access? We access like the variable name, then dot and the property like name, A dot name, A dot age. That's how we can access them. Now let's see how to take input inside the structure. So let's remove this. So now I have only declared, I have not initialized them. Okay. So now I will take the input from the user. So again scanf. Now first I will take the input in the name. So for that I need %s. Then ampersand A dot name. So that's how I will get the input in the name. So when we are taking an input, from the user, then I cannot simply say like ampersand a. No, I have to access the properties and give the values. So percent s for this string. Now how do I get input in name? So a dot name. Similarly, I will write one more scanf. Now percent d for age, and here a dot age. So after giving the input, I am printing whatever I am inputting. Let's try this. So first I will enter name, then I will enter age. Now you can see I am getting the same output. Name equals to Gagan, age equals to 22. Okay. One more thing, instead of writing two scanfs and two printfs, we can even combine them. How? So if I want to combine these scanfs and printfs, like so I can do this. So percent s, then write a space, then one more. So I want to take two inputs na, then percent s for this string and percent d for age. I want to take two inputs, so I will pass two variables here, a dot age also. So see, scanf, now first it will take an input in the string percent s, and what is my first variable name? A dot name. So the first input of type string will go into a dot name. Then it will take one more input percent d, integer type. Where it will go? It will go to a dot age. Likewise, I can combine in printf also. Like first it will print name equals to, now when it comes to print percent s, so it will search for a string here. Then I can do like this, age equals to, now percent d. So first it will print name equals to, then percent s, and name will come, then comma age equals to. Now for percent d, it will search one more integer that I can pass here. Okay. So I hope that this is clear now. This will be printed as it is. Name is equal to, when percent s comes, it will search a string here. So first we have to pass the name of the string, a dot name. Then age equals to will be printed as it is. Then percent d will come. So for percent d, I will pass a integer variable. What is my variable? A dot age. So now let's try this. So again I will print input Gagan 22. So see, my output is coming. Name equals to Gagan, comma age equals to 22. So that's how, instead of writing two statements, I can combine them also. Okay. So that was the concept of structures. So why do we need structures once more? Because if I take an array, so obviously it can hold multiple values, but they are of only same time. What if I want to create my own data type that will have members of multiple data types? Like I am having one name, then age, I can have one more like float, like salary. So I can use this also. Okay. So if I want to create my own data types that will have members of multiple different data types, then I will use structures. Okay. So how to use? First declare the data type, then declare the variable name, and to access the properties we use this a dot name, a dot age. Okay. We can also initialize at the same time, or we can take input later also. So that was the concept of structures. So I think that I have covered all the important and necessary concepts required to move on to data structures and algorithms, or even switch to other languages. So this much knowledge is sufficient to start learning data structures and algorithms. You can start learning data structures now, or you can first learn a different language like C++, Java or Python, and then learn data structures using that language. In fact, that would be a good option, because writing code in C is lengthy and tough. So I would recommend that first learn a different language between any of them like C++, Java or Python, and after that learn data structures using that language. I have built the base of your programming using this crash course. Now you are aware of the basic concepts. Okay. So now you will find it easy to learn other languages. If you want me to make a crash course or a full-fledged course on the other languages, then you can tell me in the comments and I will do that for you. So let's end this video now. वीडियो को एंड करने से पहले बस एक बात कहना चाहूँगा यार वीडियो बनाने में बहुत मेहनत लगी है, तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब ज़रूर कर देना। वीडियो अच्छी लगी हो, कुछ सीखने को मिला हो तो लाइक और शेयर भी कर देना। खाली वीडियो देखने से काम नहीं होगा यार, प्रैक्टिस भी कर लेना, ठीक है। तो एंड करते हैं वीडियो को और जल्दी मिलेंगे नेक्स्ट वीडियो में।